Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfaraz with the economic news from around the world. Today's show, big data could be Israel's next big sector. And is Wales the next UK country to seek independence? First, the headlines. China's central bank is injecting $81 billion into the country's 5 major state-owned banks to counter slower than expected growth. The injection will be in the form of a 3-month low-interest rate loan to the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, China Construction Bank, Agricultural Bank of China, and Bank of Communications. Among the sectors that have slackened are industrial production, retail sales, imports, and foreign direct investment. China's measure is narrowly targeted to provide loans to favored sectors, but some bankers and executives say it will fail to rev up economic activity. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday inaugurated a $1.5 billion project to build a port city in the Sri Lankan capital, Colombo. China has already built a port in Hambantota on Sri Lanka's southern coast that is set to become the country's biggest. China started bilateral negotiations for a free trade pact with Sri Lanka, which is situated along a vital shipping route. Since the end of a 3-decade war in 2009, Sri Lanka has spent heavily on infrastructure, giving China a strong foothold in the $67 billion economy. Air France was forced to scrap 60% of its flights for a second day as unions estimated 3/4 of pilots followed their call to strike. Unions have threatened to strike until September 22nd, which would be the longest industrial action at the company since 1998. They fear the flag carrier is seeking to bolster its Transavia France subsidiary, whose pilots earn less than Air France pilots. The company announced the Transavia fleet will be limited to 30 planes instead of the 37 originally planned, but this concession will only run until 2019.
Tomorrow should unfold as today. I want to emphasize the point there will be no blockages. We expect at least 40% of flights this Wednesday to operate, with a strike rate among pilots of around 60%.
NASA will partner with Boeing and SpaceX to build commercially owned and operated space taxis to fly astronauts to the International Space Station. The move to turn over lower Earth orbit transportation to private industry will allow the space agency to focus on more ambitious missions, like sending humans to Mars. Boeing was awarded $4.2 billion and SpaceX $2.6 billion to be ready for commercial flight services in 2017. The contract, which ends U.S. dependence on Russia for rides, has taken on new urgency amid rising tensions between the United States and Russia over Ukraine.
For the first time in more than 40 years, this nation is going to launch a vehicle intended to carry humans beyond low Earth orbit. More than 40 years.
Israel, also dubbed the data nation, is perfectly positioned to be at the forefront of the big data market. With a surprisingly large imprint on the big data industry, Israeli startups have created applications across the market. Anthony Lasmi has the details.
In the age of the internet, the amount of available data is growing at an exponential rate. This massive quantity of information has been dubbed big data. Today's primary challenge is gaining fast access and greater efficiency in sifting through that data. Today in Tel Aviv, on the 39th floor of one of the Israeli towers, Axis Innovation is bringing investors and startups that specialize in big data together. Israeli startups are anticipating this to be a potent new sector. By 2017, the market for big data could reach up to $48 billion.
We have 6 awesome big data and analytics companies lined up for you today. They're each going to present for 5 minutes, and then we're going to have time for a few questions from some of our panelists.
Big data has implications for a great number of industries. Today, though, finance and banking are the focus of projects promoted by these startups.
The banks here are quite sophisticated, and if you take an example of one of the clients here today, they work with the securities department of one of the large banks in Israel. When a person buys a stock in Israel, during the day. At nighttime, the banks have to crunch the data for the last 7 years worth of transactions. So by the time the next day comes, the bank has to understand what are the tax implications of that purchase. And there's a lot of information there. So this company created that solution for a local company.
Ofer Schreiber is looking for golden investments. He represents an American investment fund, and it is a reminder of the many bridges between Silicon Valley and Israel. For him, the future of big data is found in cybersecurity.
One of the main applications for big data will be cybersecurity. A lot of sensors are now being implemented in several locations inside enterprises, and there is a need for one central location that gathers a lot of information from different sensors, analyzing it and finding.
To be sure, the free flow of information via the internet is also threatened by the prospect of big data. Privacy is endangered when personal data is filterable for targeted advertising and other ends. This fear is not unfounded. Take the case of the NSA surveillance. Edward Snowden's information has made it common knowledge that myriad online companies such as Amazon have provided personal information to the U.S. government.
Joining us now on Skype is Tal Kenan, CEO and founder of investment management firm Clarity Capital. Mr. Kenan, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you.
Your company is a big consumer of big data. Can you tell us quickly, why is big data important?
Well, at the risk of overstating it a little bit, I think big data can be looked at as sort of a threshold moment in human development. I liken it to the advent of language. Language allowed human beings to learn through indirect experience versus direct experience. The rest of the kind of animal kingdom learns only through direct experience. I was listening to the radio the other day about a British guy who was trying to build a toaster, something that we kind of tend to think of as a very simple item from scratch, from materials mined out of the earth, and it took him a year, but he did it. The fact that we take for granted that each of us is born with a wealth of knowledge that has been imparted is attributable to language. Another threshold is maybe written language. We didn't have to hear directly from somebody else in order to learn. Today, what we're seeing is the ability to cull massive amounts of information becoming available, at paces that we've never seen before in human history, and generate insights indirectly.
Okay.
I think that's what big data is really about.
Mr. Kenan, it seems we have a technical problem. We're going to have to end the interview here. Thank you so very much for joining us. Wales has in many ways followed Scotland in developing its constitution. So as Scots vote in an independence referendum this week, some wonder whether they could be trailblazing the way for Wales to do the same.
Paidiwch a bwridar adar, which in English means do not feed the birds. In Wales, almost every sign is in both Welsh and English. Just one reminder that this country of just over 3 million has its own identity distinct from the rest of the UK. Like independence supporters in Scotland, Wales's nationalist party Plaid Cymru wants the country to be fully autonomous.
Independence, meaning responsibility, means that we won't have to depend on our neighbours to make the right decisions on our behalf. We won't have to hope that we get a government in Westminster that takes notice of us.
But according to a recent government poll, only around 12% of Welsh people share Stefan's views.
Let's stay together as a country, as Great Britain.
We should all stay together, and as I said, united we stand, divided we will fall.
And this attitude reflects the significant economic differences between Wales and Scotland.
Scotland has a far broader and more lucrative economy than we do in Wales. Scotland has oil, it has a thriving whiskey industry, it exports an awful lot, whereas Wales doesn't. It doesn't have those natural resources, and it doesn't have a very, very strong private sector.
In 1997, Wales was granted greater autonomy from Westminster, which gave rise to the National Assembly in Wales, based here in the Welsh capital, Cardiff. Power was devolved to the 60 Assembly members on areas including healthcare, local government and language. For some, more devolved powers rather than full-blown independence is the solution.
Since devolution started 17 years ago, it's not been static. Additional things have been
passed down. So the direction of travel and the arrow of history, maybe, is a good way of looking at it, is pointing to more self-government. Is it pointing towards independence? I don't think so.
As Scots take part in an independence referendum and with the 2015 general election on the horizon, it's an opportunity for voters in Wales to reflect on whether to fire up their Welsh dragon or claw on more tightly to their British neighbours.
And now for some offbeat reports that we did not want to keep from you in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. Daniel, thanks for joining us. So I understand our first article comes from Newsweek, is that?
Absolutely. Newsweek has a piece, well, it's all over the Canadian press, my home country.
Indeed.
It's all over the world press, but Newsweek had a particularly good piece looking at a trade pact called FIPA that Canada just ratified. It was signed 2 years ago. They ratified this trade pact with China. It was signed 2 years ago, but because of public outcry, they didn't actually ratify it until this week.
What kind of a trade pact are we talking about? FIPA, like free trade?
Yeah, it's essentially opening up the door for more Chinese investment in Canada. There's about $30 billion of Chinese money in Canadian energy alone, and about 4.5 billion Canadian investment total in China.
Of course, a lot of it was probably facilitated by the big influx of Chinese coming from Hong Kong, particularly also over the past 20 years, correct?
Right. The doors have been open. This summer was actually very tense. There was some spy accusations between the two countries. And some say that the ratification of this trade pact was to smooth that over.
Right.
But it's a huge, huge deal, actually, because it lets China sue Canada if the Canadian Parliament comes out with a law that China thinks will hurt its investment. So if, for example, Canada says, we actually want to clean up Alberta, we want to clean up the tar sands, then China can sue Canada behind closed doors, mind you, and say, we don't like that. That's actually bad for our investment. You can't do that. You can't have a law like that. And then Canada will have to take the law off the books because China said so. This is why there was public outcry. On top of that, this pact actually trounces on some treaties with First Nations in Canada, so actually may be deemed unconstitutional, even though Prime Minister Stephen Harper ratified it.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see where they can take it. What else do we have here?
So the New York Times carried a piece, a very interesting piece. Gilead Sciences, a California-based pharmaceutical company, actually has announced that they're going to make a hepatitis C medicine more affordable in India. So this is basically unheard of in the world of big pharma.
Right, where it's really about making big money.
Big pharma is not just called big pharma because it's big companies. It's big money, and they make big money. This medicine costs $1,000 per dose in the U.S., and they're going to make it more affordable in India. Now, so on one side, it sounds very nice, and it is very nice. To make medicine affordable to the people who need it is incredibly important. However, it also may be because lower income countries have been threatening to just take the patent away and use the medicine anyways.
I was going to ask about that. Who is paying for that?
So it actually becomes worthwhile for Gilead Sciences to do this, to take the money hit in order to keep the patent, to try to stave off any attacks on the patents.
So they're actually subsidizing themselves in order to do away with any of the threats.
It's foresight, because at the end of the day, they'll make more money by keeping the patent safe.
Sure.
So it's a good move for them business-wise. Hopefully it makes Hep C, which kills around 350,000 people a year, hopefully it makes this medicine affordable and more accessible.
Certainly more affordable, but who knows, of the 350,000 people that die a year, who knows how many will actually be saved. What is our last story?
So the Wall Street Journal blog has the story. Last month, there was this big, across the blogosphere, CEO Max Sherrison, actually he was about to become a billion-dollar startup CEO and stepped out of the job and because he wanted to spend more time with his family. And so he just, amid criticism saying this is going to be bad for your career or whatever, he said, you know what, I want to spend time with my family. I want to get out of the hustle of corporate life. I want to be at home. And so this blog now, looking back after the media hype has died down.
That seems like the real American dream, huh?
Yeah, so this is maybe the real American dream. It depends really on who you are.
He didn't leave his career entirely, did he? I mean, it's kind of a setback, but he didn't leave it.
He's not left the career. He's taking time for family. That's kind of what it is. And now it's sort of a little bit over the hump. He's writing how satisfied he is.
Okay, well, we've gotten to the hump of this edition. Thank you very much, Daniel Roth, for taking us there. That's the Economy Magazine for you guys. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfaris. Watch us again tomorrow and stay with it.